John Finney, founder of Isotropic Systems. Isotropics is basically changing the global connectivity and communications landscape. They are taking a completely new approach to solving the terminal challenges out there by using transformational optics, but John will be much better placed to tell you more about that. They have also secured $40 million in funding this year to double down on the development of the multi-beam antennas. We'll talk more about that in detail as well, but let's kick off with the basics first. John, welcome. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, thanks for the opportunity to jump on this call and just tell you a little bit more about the journey that Isotropic's on. So my background's fairly straightforward. I've got 25 years in telecoms. Half of that was, ground-based terrestrial communications, particularly mobile industry, fiber optics. I think I'm more recognized for bringing Huawei into Europe for the first time and bringing them into their first billion in revenue. And then I sort of moved across into the satellite industry. The first venture was O3b, which stood for Other 3 Billion. Satellite medium Earth orbit constellation. I joined up with the founder, Greg Weiler. I'd already met Greg in Rwanda, where he was actively rebuilding their telecoms infrastructure. And we'd always talked about, the opportunity to work together on a project. So along came O3b and I jumped in and I was with the project from the first pitch to Windsurf in Google. This is back in 2008, raised 1.5 billion US, launched 12 MEO satellites around the world. And then we exited to SES for 2.7 billion in 2016. So that went well. And then I moved across to EMC, which was a global satellite service provider, and exited that business to Global Eagle within a year of that. And then by that time, the scientific research that I'd personally invested in was starting to pique my interest, and Isotropic was born. And I could say, I could see a pathway to a technological capability that hopefully can really improve lives and extend the reach of global connectivity, which is a running theme of my career.
Amazing. Very, very impressive. Let's go back to those first days a little bit. Can you tell us more about, how did the idea for Isotropic actually come about?
Curiosity and the Romans, I would say. So, and the curiosity part is really straightforward. This came about during my time in O3b. I was told by many engineers in the satellite industry that trying to multiply the performance of existing antennas into one single device that could operate in such a way that it can connect to many satellites at once was impossible, at least at the level of performance that I was looking for. Well, you shouldn't tell me that, because that set me off into a tunnel of discovery, and really that sort of curiosity is also determination, right? So why is it like that? What would it take to change that? I just simply don't like to hear that something is impossible. I hired the best consultants in the world. I made some personal investments to try and inform my thinking as to why that problem has never yet been solved with the current technology in the industry. And it made me appreciate that the only way to find the answer was to go outside of the industry and look for alternative technologies and potential technologies in emerging scientific fields. And I really got nowhere for a couple of years, and then I happened to come across some really interesting technology known as I say technology. I came across the Lycurgus cup. The Lycurgus cup is an amazing object. It's essentially a glass vase or cup that's gilded in gold. It's owned by the Rothschilds family, and I got to see it in person at the British Museum. It was actually made by the Romans in the 4th century. And so what's amazing about this object is if you shine a light through the front, it glows a magnificent ruby red. If you shine a light through the back, it glows a brilliant sort of olive green. And only in the last 20 years did we understand that the Romans somehow, to this day, and we don't know how, chemically shaped millions of titanates, so effectively silver and gold particles, each one about 1,000th the size of a grain of salt, and each chemically shaped, then perfectly distributed within the glass vase, so that the glass appears different colors as the metal, as the light bounces off the metal within the glass. Essentially what's happening is creating 1 degree of refraction on the visible light spectrum. It's essentially an optical illusion that's carefully put together with materials, so therefore material science. And then that triggered my interest, because essentially what you're seeing there is the ability to bend light using materials. And that then sent me off to go and talk to Corning. You know, Corning make the glass on these phones, and they'd studied the object very closely. And this object is the only one that we know of in the world. And that led me to the scientific field of transformational optics, which the Lycurgus Cup helped pioneer. And that then led me to talk to professors all around the world that specialize in that scientific field, because the light bulb moment for me is, if you can bend light using materials, surely you could bend radio without moving parts. And therefore, you know, could we create an optical structure invisible to microwave that can bend radio in many different directions passively without moving parts, just using materials? And in doing so, could we potentially connect to many satellites at once? So genuinely, the initial inspiration came from something that dates back to 400 AD, set off a process of discovery, and here we are.
Well, we're all happy that you persisted. It does sound like it was a long journey, actually, to get to a point where you were convinced that this was worth pursuing.
Yeah.
So yeah, amazing. And thinking back, the first vision you had for Isotropic, was that what it is today, or how much has it changed since?
No, I think the initial premise for Isotropic was, how do we extend the reach of connectivity? I'd seen firsthand the post-genocidal impact of what had happened in Rwanda, and through my time there. And put simply, without getting into too much detail, if Twitter had existed, the genocide would never have happened to the extent that it did. And that's an absolute fact. So any opportunity to get connectivity out to those that need it the most, we access information for free, right? And so the reality that the people that need it the most can afford it the least, and are simply not able to access what is otherwise free information to us is flat wrong, especially when the right to information is essentially a fourth utility. So my initial approach was, could this technology lower the cost of antennas to such a point that it could play a leading role in bridging the digital divide? We have an amazing team in Isotropic, the smartest engineers I've ever been around, and they've, over the course of time, they've demonstrated what the true value of this technology is. And so I wouldn't say that we've pivoted, we've reprioritized our roadmap to really focus on flexibility, capability, and high performance. And we're thinking about defense, aero, and mobility enterprise first, because that's the way that we meet our margins, we get our volume going, we get our production scaling. And then after that, we'll be able to lower the cost of our terminals to a point that we can then achieve our fuller mission, which is to have a massive global impact by providing technology that could even be beneficial to consumers around the world, including emerging markets.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there just a quick follow-up question on this? Is there anything you would give early stage founders on the way when it gets to actually basically standing in front of those crossroads of trying to figure out, there is different ways I could go. There's lots of advice that it's being thrown at me. How do I know what the best route is?
Well, I mean, you don't. As a founder, you've got to be doing something new that nobody's ever done before. Nobody is going to give you a map. But I would say, if I think back to that moment and any moment where you start a new venture, I would say never underestimate the speed of innovation. I mean, the bottom line is it doesn't matter how great your idea is. You have to appreciate that there are likely many others that are innovating at the same rate or faster than you are. So what do you do with that, right? The trick is to figure out how long it will take your idea to fully develop, and you have to be realistic about that. I mean, if you take Isotropic, we'll burn through, it'll take roughly 100 million to 130 million to fully develop our product, set up manufacturing before we receive the first dollar in revenue from a customer. And so that takes time. It takes several funding rounds. It takes achievement of an enormous amount of technical milestones. So you have to be realistic about that. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what does the world look like when it's done, right? Does it fit? And is it still likely to be valuable? And you have to think critically about that, because too many founders, honestly, they get hooked on their own idea in the here and now. Because on that day, it may well solve a massive problem, but in reality, when it's developed, it's then trying to fit into an entirely new world. So as cliche as it is, start with the end in mind. That would be my advice.
Amazing. And I mean, you've obviously not just launched, but also scaled an incredible business. Any other pieces of advice or nuggets you can share around scaling?
Yeah, it's really, I think it's just a mental attitude when you start new ventures. I mean, essentially, startups are exactly like young children, right? That are emerging, getting stronger, going into adolescence and then adulthood before they figure out their place in life and move on. So think about that journey, right? At the beginning, from a company perspective, right? And from a well, if you think about it from a child's perspective, at the beginning, you've got nothing to pare back your ambition or your enthusiasm, which is great. But in reality, as you develop into adolescence, you think, well, what am I really good at? What do I enjoy? Who do I like to interact with? What's that's the process into adulthood where you place yourself into the most ideal position and you realize how you're going to fit into the world around you. So you go from, a position of being able to do all things and to figuring out what you're really good at. And that's what happens to startups, essentially. I mean, in our case, we started with that intention to bridge the digital divide. But through, as I explained, what our team has shown us as to where our value really is, through the course of time, through those funding rounds, you're continuously trying to figure out your value, right? And where do you fit in to the ecosystem? And you start to stop using a narrative which essentially says in the beginning, in that sort of early stage, we have an invention, it can solve the world's problems on every level. And you start to become much more focused on where is your value, how can you make the most impact, and you recognize the capabilities of the ecosystem, including your competition. And the more you accept that that's essentially what others are looking for in you, the better you become and the stronger you become, because you're not you're losing the naivety. You're becoming very focused at the things that as a company and with your technology, you're absolutely brilliant at. And you're leaving some of the other stuff that you might be less able to do, you're leaving that behind. So there's two types of founders, in my view, that are ones that recognize that, they understand that that's part of the journey and they embrace it. And there's other founders that don't, and they tend not to stick around because it tends to lead those companies towards a crisis.
Very, very good point. Thank you for that insight. Let's maybe jump to, well, some of the exciting news you announced this year about your $40 million investment. So you've raised from SES, from Specialized Space Investors, Orbital Ventures, UK Government's Future Fund, and existing investor Boeing Horizon X Global Ventures, Space Angels, and Firmament Ventures. I'm saying all of them just because there's so many kind of different, parties and kinds of investors to work with. Can you share something about your experience of raising your Series B?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, just to talk to Boeing, I mean, I went to Boeing because of their relevance to everything that we do. For me, they were a natural first choice, and I think we were incredibly lucky to get Boeing support. When I say relevant to what we do, I mean, leadership in specialized defense platforms, satellite manufacturing, robotics, automation, connected autonomous vehicles. And I went along and set out a vision that Isotropic can play a lead role in the world when it comes to connecting machines as well as people. And so, this is very much in Boeing's wheelhouse, right? They get it. They know exactly what we're trying to do and how it can benefit them and others within the ecosystem. And their motivations are very clear. It's trying to make the satellite and the space ecosystem stronger, and they believe that we play a key role in that. So we get really active support, as we do from all of our other investors, but we get, Boeing is a good example of incredibly active board involvement. So, that means financing, production, access to supply chain, peer review, technical reviews, introductions to, Phantom Works, business units, commercial aviation teams, doors that frankly a small company like Isotropic might never be able to open. So it's been a real honor to receive that type of support from Boeing, as is the case with all of the other investors on the board. And it's just great to see, strategic investors like Boeing that are not trying to put teeth into the deal and hold you back in return for investment, but are actually trying to help you reach your full potential as a company. And that's the sort of the dream type of board members and board involvement that any founder looks for.
Very, very true. And staying with Boeing for a second, because I've had a look earlier and we have a few of our ATI Boeing Accelerator cohort companies with us today who've obviously joined the Boeing Horizon X portfolio recently. Any advice for them about how to make the most of that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's amazed me about Boeing is, and I'm not sure what the current workforce is, but it's huge, right? I think Boeing is in the top 30 companies in the world. The way that, I don't know exactly how Boeing do this, especially from a Horizon X perspective, but the way that you get introduced into the right people, it happens at speed. You get connected in a really professional way. You get access to people very, very quickly, and all you need to do is ask, right, and explain your motivations. And what you don't feel as though you're trying to navigate around a company that's got 100,000 people or more. You actually feel it's more like a company of 100, right? You're getting straight to the people that matter. So it's really down to the portfolio of founders to spend a lot of time with their Horizon X board member and tap into this unprecedented opportunity to be able to navigate around Boeing, not necessarily to seek out new business, but to seek out advice or to get counsel or to get peer review on a particular topic. I mean, Boeing's resources are vast, and the way that they allow portfolio companies to access those resources is just incredibly special.
Yeah, thank you. Just for the attendees as well, I've got another question or so, but if you have any questions, do put them in the Q&A and we will make sure to, well, hopefully have enough time to go through it after this. But my next question is more about, you know, your amazing team and hiring. So you started in 2013. How has the team grown since? And do you have any hiring advice for early stage startups?
Yeah, so hiring is always a challenge. If you believe in developing high performance teams, and if you genuinely want to try and establish the right culture for a company, which is not something that you can do following a blueprint and build day one, you know, the company culture is based on the people that you bring along. You start off, frankly, you know, and I think this is the reason why many founders don't become the CEOs at exit, right? Because founders tend to have a typical mindset of just get the ball over the line. And in the beginning, that's absolutely the right thing and probably the only way that you can be successful. But then all of a sudden you've got access to capital and you're scaling up and you need to adapt. You need to go into the process of listening and learning from your own team and accessing the enormous amount of experience that they bring along. And through that, over time, the company gets stronger and stronger and stronger. I think from a founder or a CEO point of view, you know, you should think deeply about diversity and inclusion from day one. It's not, diversity and inclusion is not something that you should retroactively put into your business. You should do it from day one. You should bring in outside specialists, as we do, to help coach teams to become high performance teams. You should try and create a platform for all employees to participate and engage in the things that matter to them, not necessarily what matters to you. And I'll say this as though, you know, it might sound as though I'm an expert in this area. No, this is an area where I'm continuously learning as a founder, and where my colleagues are continuously teaching. And it's a process of trying to make sure that you hire to have the highest possible engagement in the company, so that when you do get those bumps in the road, when you do face a hard challenge, you're not on your own, which is what tends to happen with founders. You have this phenomenally strong team that can tackle anything that's in front of them. And so again, it's starting with the end in mind, and it's thinking about the company that you want to be right from the very beginning, so that every hiring decision that you make is very deliberate, very thought out, and thinks about the bigger picture of when we're really successful and we're much larger, what type of company do I really want to be operating, and build into that. Yeah,
very, very good point. We had one question in the Q&A that actually you basically pretty much answered already, which was, how did Isotropic create a world-class leadership team? Maybe you can add anything to that, but I would like to add to that question as well. How do you, keep your staff and your, early employees happy throughout the years? Can you give us a glimpse of any sort of internal things you guys do to achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as I get deeper and deeper into this project, I start to appreciate that maybe not everybody's personal drivers are the same. And, I guess some people are really interested in wealth creation, and that's what definitely part of the journey here. If you join the company, of course, we have, attractive stock option plans. And on that, again, if it's advice to founders, I want to say, look, if you're not putting at least 15% of your company away for your employees, you're doing something wrong. And the status quo in Europe is more like 6%. And that's just mean. It's mean-spirited. If you really want to share the opportunity, you must, as a company, put 15% away. That means you as a founder have put that 15% away, typically before you close your A round, because otherwise you're not authentically trying to share the benefit of all of the massive amounts of hard work that you're expecting from your team. And so that's one element of it. The other is that the work is materially interesting. I think also if you focus on D&I, you create an inclusive culture that makes where you work a much better place to work. And for us, that's a journey we're developing over time. You focus on employee engagement, you bring in coaching, you focus on training, you look at succession plans, you think about opportunities to recognize and promote individuals for the work that they do. We have a strong rewards culture in Isotropic. And, at the end of the day, for me, you have to strike a square deal with your colleagues, right? Which is, on one hand, to be in a pre-revenue startup, there's just no boxing around the fact that it takes an enormous amount of sacrifice. You won't necessarily be home early every night. You will put in late hours. You will have to work incredibly hard to do things that, frankly, nobody's done before. But at the same time, the return on that investment has got to be there, and in a way that motivates you. So we try and look at all the different drivers of performance and engagement, recognizing that everybody's different, and try and have the breadth there of effectively what motivates people to come into work. And we'll never be satisfied. We'll never be done. It's a continuous process of improvement.
Very, very true. Thank you for that, John. Are we ready to jump into a couple of questions?
Sure.
Amazing. Let's kick off with Andy's question. Andy from Air Expert. Hello, Andy. He asks, do your anticipated buyers keep up with the pace of technological advancements? For example, are you entering slow-moving industries like aerospace? Sorry, I can't read today. And if so, how do you intend to deal with slow adoption?
Yeah, I think that the pace of innovation generally is picking up. I'm not sure that I see aero as particularly slow. I definitely see it as an area where we could do a lot better, and we're going to try and play a role in that. So for example, I mean, if you take aero, how is it possible that you can do all of the things that you do today on Expedia and book your extra baggage, but today you still can't book your internet connectivity for the seat that you sit in? I mean, it's borderline ridiculous. And that's just simply, certain parts of that particular industry not doing enough, frankly, not working hard enough to create the right level of customer experience, and to make sure that when people get on board, they naturally connect to the internet capabilities that are provided, which is fantastic, that you can browse the web at really high speeds now, so high above the earth. It's amazing technology that we're able to provide to when we put our antennas on board aircraft. So there's an element there which is a little bit frustrating, I agree. But in general, when I look across defense, aeronautical, enterprise mobility, I think that there's a quickening. It's the speeding up of innovation, so much faster than it was 10 years ago. And to some degree, it's just really important that we do our end and we keep up. So yeah, so many new things that are happening in the world around us. Our customers are always telling us new things about what they're trying to do in the network for different reasons. It's completely fascinating.
Awesome. Maybe one question from the chat. Jonathan asks, is there any particular reason to be doing research here in Reading?
Yeah, so we were, at one point, we were doing all of our engineering in the US. We now just focus our US activities. We have a subsidiary in Maryland, and we focus that purely on US government defense work. But we cut a deal with the UK that we would put all of the jobs here in the UK, and we've created close to 100 jobs at this point, and we'll create another probably 150 over the next year. And they're highly skilled STEM roles. 80% of this company have PhDs, and I'm proud of that, to be perfectly honest with you. I feel that given everything that's gone on over the last 18 months, creating opportunities in the UK, I'm a proud Brit, and I really believe that everybody has to do everything they possibly can to create as many opportunities here as possible. The UK government's been amazingly supportive in that. They've provided equity in the last round. They've also provided grant funding. They've introduced us to the space agencies, to the satellite catapults, to the European Space Agency that work with us in our product development. I mean, the UK has a fantastic base to help companies like us to succeed. And in return, we will create jobs, we'll be aligned to academia, we'll pay taxes on worldwide revenue here, we'll bring the export revenue potential that we have from the UK. And so, in trying to work out what's the right location, we worked with the Department of Industry and Trade, and Reading just turns out to be attractive in terms of how we map the skill sets that we need here to build the product. This tends to be the happy compromise from a travel point of view. We tend to be able to get more people into Reading than we would any other location in the UK.
Amazing. Okay, we have another question, which is, what are the next steps for Isotropic? What are your plans for the next 2 to 3 years? And a tricky question. And could we get any insight into the upcoming commercial launch?
Yeah, so we're actually delivering our first antenna products to SES and a few defense customers at the end of this year. And that goes into a very rigorous 6-month cycle of field trials, demonstrations, pilots. We're also, so that takes us then through into sort of June timeframe of 22. And that's when we launch our first product, which will be, and I'll be a bit guarded about what I say about what that product will be, because we don't like to telegraph our punches to the competition. They'll learn about it from our customers when we announce not just the product, but the customers that are actively using it. That will be our approach. But I know that that will be a wow moment and a massive achievement for the Isotropic team here that are just working so hard to get that product out. And we have development contracts with the US Navy, the US Army, with SES, Inmarsat, and others. So commercial and defense, we have a lot of traction, a ton of support, by the way, from those early customers to see our product reach the market, which is fantastic, because it obviously indicates there's a ton of demand for what we're doing. And as a founder, there's nothing better than seeing our team work together, build up every component of this fantastic antenna that we're building. And then I really look forward to the day where we see it on trains and planes and coaches and yachts, and you can really see people using this technology for the first time and doing things that they never could do before. So we're 1 year from product launch, and we're on track despite everything that's happened with COVID. The Isotropic team, they did such an amazing job of holding the line and managing to work remotely, which honestly, it blows me away that they they accomplished that given the circumstances. And here we are, we're 1 year from product launch, and we're just massively excited to be involved in some of the biggest satellite network deployments the world's ever seen.
And we are excited to see it happen. You mentioned some of your really impressive contracts and partners. Can you share anything around your approach to building those partnerships that could be useful for early stage founders that are still trying to get their foot in the door to some of those?
Yeah, I mean, some of those introductions were actually made by Boeing or one or two of our other investors. You know, for example, the Defense Innovation Unit project, which is where we're designing our technology into the USS Zumwalt class destroyer, where they have particularly advanced and special needs. You know, that first engagement that we had with them, I think, you know, rightly, the first engagement we have with any customers, because what we're doing is so radically different, it's met with a level of skepticism. When you have Boeing in the room with you, they come and they support you in that meeting, and frankly pitch the technology as well as we could. And we work together and we make that presentation, and suddenly the penny drops and they start to realize what we have. And through that lifting credibility, because, you know, Boeing are willing to stand behind what we're doing and present to, frankly, what is one of their most important customers, right, which is US Defense. I mean, it's just incredibly valuable that you know, to have that opportunity. So, you know, that's the type of how we've got into some of these engagements. Others are because we certainly with my background and the background of the leadership team, they know the commercial space sector very well. And right now there's a gold rush, right? I mean, the reality is that there are so many new satellite systems in construction now at different orbits, LEO, MEO, GEO, and HEO. And why? Because Elon Musk has removed the bottleneck, right? We used to be limited to 3 launch providers. Now, a few things have changed. Launch vehicles land themselves back down, right? And that's Elon Musk. So now it's possible to launch thousands and thousands of satellites in an affordable way. Satellites are now made in days, not years. And the result of that is space has become that much more accessible. So all of these systems are being built in those 4 orbits, totaling tens of thousands of satellites over the next 3 or 4 years. And not one of them can talk to each other. So that's what we do, right? We create a single antenna that can connect to all of those satellites at once, bring down the best attributes of each, deliver that to the end customer. And that's incredibly valuable. So, you know, we are, because of that unique proposition, we're lucky in the sense that many of those satellite operators, they just actively engage with us because what we're working towards is absolutely what they need.
Absolutely. We have a couple of other questions which are kind of similar. I'll go with the bottom one, which is, do you have any plans to enter novel areas as you move to a more consumer-facing approach? UAV has been mentioned, but, you know, anything you can share at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think one of the biggest drivers for satellite capacity, and I think it's well understood by the incumbent and the emerging players that are actively building next generation satellite systems, is we're very, very quickly going to move into an AI-driven autonomous platform world, and the increase in demand for satellite capacity is going to be driven in the near future more by machines that need to operate autonomously. That means they need 100% uptime. They need to have continuous connectivity. And a certain level of performance from antennas. So we see very much that we are going to be actively deployed in autonomous ships, autonomous UAVs. I think the UAV market is a huge market for us. I think right now we're actively engaged on UAV opportunities with all but 2 of the major defense contractors in all of the NATO countries. And that's just, again, it's demand that's created on their side, where they're actively seeking opportunities to have antennas that can talk to all networks to make sure that that uptime is close to 100%, if not 100%. So it really is reaching that tipping point where it becomes much more about connecting machines as it is people.
Very, very good point. Now you're all sending through questions. We might not have time to go through all of them, but this is an interesting one. You mentioned that many of your of the team have PhDs, and one of the attendees is asking, can someone with a master's degree also work for Isotropic Systems? Do you support getting postgraduate education while working?
Absolutely. Look, the fact that so many of the company have PhDs is just a byproduct of their past experience. But at the end of the day, I value ability over experience, right? Or education background. If you come for an interview in Isotropic, tell us something that you've done that's really, really smart and that you're really, really proud of. And I don't care what your background is, if it's smart, it's interesting. So you can come into this company from any walk of life. We have a really strong D&I program here. That means bonuses are not paid if we don't meet those targets, because if you don't set a target for D&I, you'll never meet it. And that goes all the way to neurodiversity. So we're trying to make everything as inclusive as we can. And it doesn't matter what background you come from, you just have to have the right stuff, right? So that's you know, drive, determination, and the smarts. Doesn't matter how you got there. If you've done fantastic things in your career, we want to talk to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We are already out of time, actually. I do want to give you the kind of last minute to leave us with any final words and potentially explain what's on the whiteboard, because that has been asked as well. Very interesting whiteboard behind you. But yeah, thank you so much, John, for taking the time. Any last words from you? No,
I mean, if there's anybody out there that understands what's on the whiteboard, you should come and talk to us, because we have a job here. No, but you know, we are hiring. We are growing at an exponential rate. We want anybody that joins here, we want you to have fun, opportunity, to enjoy the process of the hard work by creating something new. Our antennas are set to be deployed on a massive global scale. You're going to have a real impact in what you do and the markets that we serve. And you're going to have an opportunity to say, you know, that was me. I did that, right, before the product's launched. And I would encourage everyone to look at our careers page, so isotropicsystems.com/careers. And yeah, and look forward to hearing from you. We're really eager to get new talent into the company. That's our first priority right now.
Brilliant. Well, everyone, definitely apply. Sounds like a great place to work. And yeah, lovely. Thank you so much, John, again, for taking the time to speak to us today. And we hope you have a great rest of your day, and good luck for all the exciting things that will come in the future.
Great. And thanks for everyone that tuned in and the great questions. Appreciate that.